Sit close and listen, because this is not a story for careless ears. It happened long ago, but the ground still remembers. The night the child was born, the sky broke open like a cracked pot. Thunder rolled without rest, and rain fell hard enough to chase even the brave indoors. Women screamed, animals cried, and the wind ran through the village paths as if it was late for something important. Then the drums began. No man touched them. No hands moved. Yet from the old shrine, deep and slow, the drums beat like a heart waking from sleep. The elders froze. No one spoke. Fear does not like noise. Inside a small mud house, a child entered the world. He did not cry, not once. His eyes opened wide, calm and clear, as if he had been waiting. The women helping the birth stepped back. A child who does not cry is a question no one wants to answer. By morning, the storm ended. The drums stopped. The village breathed again. But something had changed. Something had been noticed. And when the forest notices you, it never forgets. The child grew quietly, like a shadow that learns to walk. He spoke less than other children and listened more. His eyes followed things others could not see. When goats escaped their ropes, they returned when he called, calm and obedient. Birds sat near him longer than they should. Dogs lowered their heads when he passed. People began to whisper. They said the forest knew him. They said the drums liked him. They said too much for a child to hear. Other children avoided him. Mothers pulled their sons away when he came close. His own mother tried to smile through it all, holding him tighter each day, but fear travels faster than love. The father grew silent. Men laughed behind his back, calling his home unlucky. At night, when the moon was thin, the drums sounded once or twice, then stopped. Always when the child was awake. The elders met in low voices. Old stories were remembered, but only the parts filled with fear. I sat among them with my drum resting silent on my lap. I warned them gently. But fear does not like gentle words. Trouble came the way it always does, slowly, then all at once. The rains delayed. The yams shrank in the ground. A sickness took a young girl, and grief began to search for a reason. Eyes turned toward the quiet child, not quickly, but surely, like the sun finding its place. The mother felt it first. Women stopped greeting her. At the river, space opened around her as if she carried smoke. The father began sleeping facing the wall. Shame eats men from the inside before it shows on their faces. One evening, the child asked his mother why people looked at him with tight mouths and cold eyes. She had no answer that would not hurt him, so she said nothing. Silence can be kinder than truth. The chief called a council. He spoke of tradition, of protection, of the many before the few. He spoke of the forest as if it were hungry. I spoke too. I said the forest punishes lies, not children. Some elders shifted. Others frowned. That night, the drums returned, louder, closer, and fear finally found its voice. They never said what they planned to do. That is how villages hide from themselves. No one spoke the word, but everyone moved as if they had heard it. White cloth was washed. A narrow path toward the forest was cleared. The chief stopped meeting the mother's eyes. The father drank more palm wine than usual. When his wife cried, he turned away. Silence followed him like a curse. The child felt it. He stopped wandering and stayed close to his mother, holding her wrapper tightly. At night, he spoke in his sleep of drums under roots and trees that remember names. On the morning they came, the sky was clear. That frightened me most. Evil prefers calm days. They washed the child gently. They dressed him in clean cloth. The mother screamed until her voice broke. The father stood still, as if his feet were buried. As they led the child away, the drums began beating wildly. Not from one place, but from everywhere. From the ground. From the trees. From the space between breaths, the forest waited. The forest does not rush. It opens slowly, like a mouth that knows it will be fed. The light faded after only a few steps. Birds fell silent. Even the men carrying the child felt their arms grow heavy. The child did not struggle. That was what haunted them later. He looked back once at his mother. His eyes held no anger. Only sadness. At the old tree, the one no axe had ever touched, the men stopped. The chief spoke shaky words meant to sound brave. The drums beat harder. Then they left the child there. They ran back to the village like thieves. By evening, rain fell. Heavy rain. People danced and praised the ancestors. Crops drank. Guilt was buried under joy. But I did not play my drum. I turned it upside down. because the forest had not eaten, the forest had listened. The morning after the sacrifice, the village woke to something unfamiliar. Silence, not peace. Silence that pressed against the ears. No birds sang. No goats bleated. Even babies slept longer than usual, as if the night had taken something from them. People smiled anyway. Smiles can be trained. The chief ordered Thanksgiving rites. Women cooked. Men gathered. Drums were brought out, but no one could play them. Each time a hand struck the skin, the sound came out dull, like hitting wet cloth. By afternoon, the first sign appeared. Fresh footprints circled the old shrine. Small footprints, bare, child-sized. Someone laughed nervously and said it was a prank. Another said it must be a hunter's child. But hunters do not walk in perfect circles. That night, the drums began again. Not wild this time. Slow, careful. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats again. The rhythm of calling. Doors were locked. Fires burned low. Mothers held their children tightly, counting breaths. I sat outside with my drum untouched. I listened to the pattern and felt my bones grow cold. That rhythm was not for celebration. It was for return. On the third night, the sickness came. Not like before. This one chose carefully. Strong men woke coughing black water. Women fainted without warning. The healer's herbs failed. Prayers fell flat like dry leaves. Then the drums changed. They moved closer. Each night, the sound shifted from the forest edge toward the village paths. Dogs howled and hid. Chickens refused to roost. No one slept properly. A boy swore he saw a small figure standing near the well, watching the moon ripple in the water. When men rushed there with torches, nothing remained except wet footprints leading back toward the trees. Fear finally spoke aloud. "This is because of the child," someone said. The chief's voice shook as he answered. The forest was fed, but the drums answered louder. That same night, the mother disappeared. Her wrapper was found near the old tree, folded neatly, not torn. No blood, no struggle. Only deep footprints beside smaller ones, walking together into the forest. The father screamed until his throat failed him, and still. The drums did not stop. By the 7th day, the village understood a truth it had avoided. The forest was not angry because it was hungry. It was angry because it was insulted. You do not throw away what belongs to the land. The sickness spread faster now. The river tasted bitter. Crops yellowed overnight. Even the air felt heavy, like breathing through cloth. At sunset, the drums beat without pause. Not loud, firm. Like footsteps approaching a door that will open whether invited or not. Then, from the path between the trees, a figure emerged. Small, calm, clean. The child stood at the edge of the village, untouched by dirt or fear. His eyes glowed softly, reflecting firelight that did not reach him. Behind him, the forest swayed, listening. No one moved. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Why did you leave me?" Men dropped to their knees. Women wailed. The chief tried to speak, but his tongue refused him. "I was not cursed," the child said. "I was chosen." The drums stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The child walked forward alone. Each step pressed into the earth as if sealing a promise. No one dared block his path. Mothers pulled their children back, ashamed of the way they once stared. He stopped at the chief's compound. The old man trembled, sweat soaking his cloth. "You broke the law older than your fathers," the child said softly. "You gave fear a crown." The chief collapsed. That night, the forest entered the village. Roots cracked the ground like fingers. Trees leaned closer. The shrine split open, revealing drums no one had carved. They beat once, and every lie spoken in the village returned to its owner. Some went mad. Some fled and never returned. Others fell sick and did not rise again. But not all were punished. The father was spared. The children were spared. Those who had spoken against the sacrifice were spared. Justice, like the forest, sees detail. Before dawn, the child returned to the forest edge. His mother stood beside him now, eyes peaceful, skin glowing like wet clay in moonlight. "We will sleep," he said, "but we will listen." And with that, the forest closed. Years passed. The village grew smaller, quieter, humbler. No drum was played without respect again. No child was ever blamed for fear. At the forest edge, people still hear the rhythm on certain nights. Not angry, not joyful, but watchful. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. I am old now. My hands shake when I lift my drum, but I still remember. I still teach. When children ask why the forest matters, I tell them this story. Not to frighten them, but to remind them, the land does not need blood. It needs truth, and when fear rules, it always demands a child first. After the forest closed, peace did not return the way people expected. Peace that comes after wrongdoing never arrives gently. It creeps in, testing hearts. Some villagers dreamed the same dream. They stood before the old tree, holding offerings they did not remember gathering. When they woke, their palms smelled of earth and ash. No one spoke of it at first, but silence can rot faster than words. Children began to change. They listened more. They stopped lying easily. When scolded unfairly, they stared with eyes too calm for their age. Mothers whispered that the forest was teaching them. One night, a hunter vanished. He was the loudest voice during the sacrifice, the first to shout that the child must go. His footprints were found leading calmly into the forest, not dragged, not chased, just walking. The drums did not beat that night. They did not need to. The village learned that punishment was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet correction, slow and certain, like seasons shifting. Fear left, respect took its place, a new chief was chosen, but he ruled carefully. He consulted elders. He listened to women. He asked children what they saw. Power that ignores listening does not last long near the forest. Offerings returned, not of blood, but of harvest and truth. People confessed wrongs openly. Quarrels were settled before sunset. The land began to heal. Then, during the dry season, the drums returned. Not close, not far, balanced, the rhythm came every seventh night. Always the same. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. No one panicked. Instead, people gathered quietly. Fires burned low. The elder women hummed old songs without words. One night, the father walked to the forest edge alone. He did not cry. He did not beg. He knelt and spoke thanks. The wind answered by bending the grass. When he returned, his back was straighter, his eyes clearer. He never spoke of what he felt, but his grief no longer poisoned him. Healing, like justice, works slowly, but it works deep. Children born after the sacrifice were different. They were not afraid of darkness. They did not fear the forest. When storms came, they watched the sky instead of running. One girl spoke one evening while pointing at the trees. They are awake tonight, and she was right. The forest moved that night, not to punish, not to warn, but to remind. A dead tree near the path fell by itself, revealing carvings underneath its bark. Old symbols, older than memory. They told a story of balance, of chosen children who guarded borders between worlds. The elders wept. They had forgotten who the child truly was. The village gathered at dawn and rebuilt the shrine, not as a place of fear, but of teaching. No sacrifices, only stories. The drums were placed there, untouched. No one dared play them, because some sounds must only answer the forest. Years softened faces, but not memory. Every child learned the tale before learning their lineage. Not to shame the village, but to guard it. Once, traders mocked the story. They laughed and said drums do not beat themselves. That night, their fire would not light. Their animals refused to move. By morning, they left quietly. The forest does not argue. It demonstrates. I watched generations grow with humility. Pride thinned. Greed weakened. The land remained fertile. Sometimes, at dusk, a small figure is seen at the forest edge. Not frightening, just watching. Those who see him feel a warmth in their chest, followed by the urge to tell the truth. That is his gift. That is his work. I am near the end now. My voice cracks. My drum rests. But the forest remains awake. When you hear drums with no hands, do not run. Ask what truth you buried. When fear asks for a child, refuse it. Fear is always hungry, and it never stops eating. The child was not cursed. He was the warning. And the forest remembers everything. Steady, elder-voiced, slow-burning. Long after the sacrifice became a lesson instead of a wound, strangers began to arrive again. Time makes people curious, and curiosity sometimes wears arrogance. They came with iron tools and loud laughter. They said the forest was wasting land. They said trees do not remember. The new chief warned them gently. This ground listens, he said. They laughed. That night, their campfire burned blue. Their shadows bent the wrong way. One man swore the drums followed him when he walked. At dawn, half of them were gone. No blood, no tracks, just silence and tools lying where hands had dropped them. The rest left without speaking. The village did not celebrate. Celebration insults balance. They simply repaired the path and poured water on the earth. The forest was not protecting the village. It was protecting the rule. A drought came years later, harder than any before. Crops failed. Riverbeds cracked. Fear crept back, thin and sharp. Whispers began again. Old whispers. Dangerous ones. What if the forest wants another gift? Someone said. The words chilled the air. That night, the drums beat once, hard. Not calling, warning. An elder woman stood and spoke before fear could grow legs. We will not trade children for comfort, she said. If we suffer clean, the village agreed. They rationed food, shared water, buried the weak with honor. Rain came late, but it came. The forest had been watching. The children born during the drought became leaders, calm, just. They did not rule loudly. They ruled steadily. One boy asked me once, will the forest ever sleep? I told him the truth. No, it rests when people remember. He nodded like someone who understood more than his years allowed. That night, I dreamed of the child again. Not small this time, taller, stronger, still gentle. He said nothing. He did not need to. When my legs failed me, they carried me to the shrine. The drum sat there, untouched, breathing softly with the night air. I placed my hand on one. It was warm, not alive, not dead, waiting. The forest hummed, low and patient. I smiled. This is why I tell you this story. Not because drums can beat themselves, but because fear will always ask for something precious, and the land will always remember what you give it. Choose carefully. The forest is listening. Years passed, and the forest's memory grew thicker than the village walls. Every tree seemed older, wiser, their roots tangled like secrets too heavy to speak. Travelers would enter, searching for the rumored drums, but they found only silence, and the feeling that eyes followed them even when the forest seemed empty. Some nights, the wind carried faint beats, far off, as if the drums were whispering history into the dark. The village children, now grown, would gather near the edge and listen, their eyes wide with awe, learning lessons no teacher could give. A stranger once asked me, did the child ever return? I smiled, letting the question hang in the air. Some answers are not spoken. Some exist only in how the land breathes, how the wind shifts when no one watches. The drums are patient. They wait for the moment when a heart is ready to understand. And when it comes, they will speak, but only the wise will hear. One evening, a fire cracked at the forest's edge. Smoke curled like ghostly fingers, and the village held its breath. A boy from the drought years ran back, shouting, something is moving near the old shrine. We followed. Shadows danced between trees, and the earth throbbed underfoot. There was no sound but our own hearts and the faintest pulse of drums beneath the soil. At the shrine, nothing had changed. Only the soil pressed softly around a new sapling. No child, no figure, only growth. The forest had reminded us once again, protection comes not from force, but from respect. And even when we think it is silent, it is always listening. The village learned to live alongside whispers of the forest. Crops thrived where they were planted with care. Children played where elders taught them patience. Every year, they left offerings, a bowl of water, a bundle of yams, a song carried into the night. And every year, the drums responded. Not with fear, not with vengeance, but with rhythm, gentle yet commanding, a heartbeat of balance. No outsider dared disturb the peace. Tales spread beyond rivers and mountains, the forest that remembers, the drums that speak, the village that listens. I am old now. My voice is thin, but my eyes still see. I tell you this story not to frighten, but to remind. Gifts of respect last longer than gold. Lessons learned in fear fade faster than those learned with wisdom. The child's presence is never gone. Not in flesh, but in essence. Every sapling, every drumbeat, every hush of the wind carries memory of the sacrifice and the choice the village made. Some nights, I still hear the drums. I do not fear them, I smile. They are friends now, guiding, reminding, teaching. Remember this, the forest never forgets. The drums never tire. And we all of us are bound to what we give and what we take. So feed your heart with care. Speak softly to the world. Honor what is alive. Because if you forget, the drums will remind you, whether you wish it or not. And when the time comes, you will hear them beating themselves, calling not for fear, but for understanding. The story ends here. Yet it begins again, in every heart willing to listen.